we understand that looking from these aerial pictures, the protesters are now moving up Flinders Street. So as to whether or not they are starting to disperse, we're going to have to watch and wait. We're keeping a close eye on these pictures, but it certainly seems like the bulk of the crowd may have started to ease off. Some have certainly dropped off along the way. Let's bring in political consultant Jim Middleton now. Jim, we haven't heard from the Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews today. This is a real challenge for his government as to how they deal with this, how harshly they, shut down these protests that we're seeing have turned pretty ugly this morning.
Certainly did, but not quite as ugly as it was yesterday. Good afternoon to you, Ash, and certainly not so far. And if these people do start to disperse, that's a very good thing. It didn't appear that there was a great deal of leadership, can I put it that way, in terms of the protesters, the few hundred that were there, starting at the CFMEU headquarters, then heading to the Victorian Parliament, and now God knows where. But look, this is a difficult situation, no doubt about it. If you have a situation, as the Victorian government was suggesting this morning, that they'd checked around building sites and found that 50% of them were non-compliant, checked 150 building sites, found 360 cases of people who were testing positive, 49 of them people from outside the metropolitan area. I'm not quite sure what the Victorian government was supposed to do in those circumstances, but to shut the building industry. If the industry had been more compliant, then maybe they'd still be at work. There were suggestions I heard from the master builders this morning that there should be rapid antigen testing on building sites in Victoria. Now, you might recall that in New South Wales, they were talking about doing that for the local government areas of concern for workers who lived within those areas but had to work outside. And then they realised that that would mean that at every work site, there would have to be a registered nurse or something like that, and they had to abandon that idea. So nice as it is as an idea, there are certain practicalities involved here. There's one other thing that I would say, or a couple of other things that I would say about this. Number one, if the federal government had done its job, and if we had been right at the front of the queue as far as vaccines are concerned, this may not have been an issue now. We would have all been vaccinated by now, and this would not be a particular issue. The other thing too is that there's no doubt that by the CFMEU suggesting that it would oppose the closing of lunchrooms on building sites, when these people were at work, that was not a particularly insightful decision, that this has led to this situation. There are thousands of people out of work in Victoria at the moment. Builders, labourers, people on construction sites are still working. It's not a great ask, in my view, to suggest that they not gather in their lunchrooms in close proximity in cold weather, where the virus is much more transmissible. It's a sacrifice for sure, but not much of a sacrifice in these circumstances.